Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Deep Space at Ars Electronica Center. My name is Stefan Mittelböck-Jungwirth-Voringer and we are presenting together with my dear colleague Peter Holzkorn. We are presenting today in the framework of Inside Futurelab Live here from the Deep Space, two of our fields where we are working in. The whole setup here in the Deep Space is on one end the live presentation, the live stream, which is done through our deep virtual production. You can imagine we have here this, imagine like that we have here the situation in the Deep Space with a camera which is live tracked, and it using the methodology of anamorphosis to show you out there the right perspective of the 3D content here in the background. So we are going to start here with the first presentation of Poetic system. I will show you some slides, some projects which we have done in the past, and afterwards Peter is taking over and showing us about the field of the art of swarms. See you in a bit. So, poetic systems is a topic, is a field where Ars Electronica Futurelab is working in already for a while. There's a lot of projects have been happening in this field, and what does this mean, these poetic systems? What can you imagine by this? Poetic refers very much to this artistic approach. It tries to visualize things, to make things legible, and of course it's the part of creation in it. Systems, what does this mean? I mean, we humans, we are a system on our own, but we also created a lot of artificial systems, and there is like machine systems and open systems and closed systems. So the question is now, how can we deal with all these systems? We thought it might be possible somehow to create something which makes it possible, which makes it readable for us humans. How can we perceive all these non-readable systems? We think the answer is art, right? Because art is an emotional, it speaks in sensual, emotional language, and it creates through its immediate appearance a free space, right? Art is always, it touches you on an emotional and aesthetic level, and you're able to read and perceive it in a different way. It offers new strategies and new ways of thinking and enables an epistemic transformation. The transformation is a very important thing. You know, we look at all these systems and we kind of need to transform them into something which is readable. And transformation has always to do with deconstructing, right? We look at this and we need to deconstruct something to make it readable and construct something new which allows us to read these systems. And it's also a process of creation. Creation is, like in the artistic sense, a very important point, and exactly that's the point where we can create poetic systems. Artworks, as we call them, poetic systems, are making things and systems readable and legible. So here just some examples of projects we have done in the past. I would like to start with the very, very early one, which is done 2001, so 20 years ago. This was, by the way, my first project back then when I joined the Ars Electronica Futurelab, and we tried to visualize the activity in a building, the stress level of an educational center here in Linz. Another one we did a little bit later was done in Berlin for SAP. We tried, or this project is toying with the interlinking of the public and the private or economic systems. It's you can imagine there is this like huge business building in the center of Berlin, in Berlin Mitte, and there we really tried to create a kind of membrane between the outer world and this business company. So we created here this visualization inside the building, and we had a lot of sensors and possibilities of interaction to the building itself which have been shown inside. Another project, it's called Source Code. You see it here behind me. The idea behind this project was to make the system SAP, the system of a business company, visible and legible to the visitors there, and it was also the idea to create a guiding system for the visitors to the building. The situation here is that the visitors' parking lot is outside, kind of hidden on the corner. So we decided to go for a water flow outside. Since we human always have been orienting on water, we thought it might be a good idea to create this kind of water flow to lead the people to the main entrance. So as soon as you come to the main entrance, this water flow from outside, which is guided by a landmark outside, but as soon as you come to this main entrance, the water flow is changing to a digital water flow where a lot of little creatures are living inside. And all these creatures are done by processes of SAP. So as soon as something is happening in this business system inside SAP, a little creature is born, and it's down there in this digital water flow. And some of them, they have different behavior. Some of them are curious, the other ones are shy, and you can interact with them. So this poetic system clearly visualize a system which is not readable at all to us humans, since it's about data, it's about things we are lacking of the possibility to read this somehow. In the end, when the visitors want to go up to the 4th floor, to the visitor center, they are accompanied by all these processes, and as soon as you arrive at the 4th floor, they show what they are made of. Basically, data, what does this mean? They're made of ones and zeros, and in the end you see them, and they kind of rain down again to the source of the water flow and guide you again. Another project we have done in Vienna. What did we try here to visualize? An airport is a big group of systems. There's so many different things going on, so many people going in and out there. And we thought it might be an idea, or we imagined a phenomenon we called Zeitraum. Zeitraum is the German word for time, space. We thought that all the airports on this globe are kind of hooked to each other, and they are they have this bubble in between, and this bubble in our imagination changes. It's depending on the imagination of the passengers which are going to the airport. That means if you go in, and as soon as you crossed the security control, you're closer to New York than to the taxi driver who brought you to the airport. There is its own system, it's its own society. They speak English, the border controls are really tough in a way, and it plays a lot with the, it's playing with the difference of time and distance. New York feels pretty close. It's not. Yeah. As I told already, it's more close than the outer world you saw before. And this system we visualized here is based on this real flight data. That means we see here all these valleys and mountains which are created by the flights which are coming in and out. And the texts you see here, they are written by writers which we invited to create texts about and write about this phenomenon of Zeitraum. There's a lot more in there, but this would go too far for now. A last project I would like just to mention, which is also in this field, tries to create an intersection between a financial institution, its architecture, the environment, and also the user inside the building. It visualizes all the things are going on in there and also combines data from outside like weather, etc. So I hope I could give you a little glimpse to this topic. I hope you could understand a little bit what we are doing in this field. Later on, you will have the chance to ask some questions. And now I would like to hand over to my dear colleague, Peter Holzkorn. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, and I'm very happy that we have this combination of topics today, because I feel that poetic systems are in a way very closely related to the art of swarms. The art of swarms, the topic in which we that encompasses the Futurelab's quest and projects trying to find visual expressive forms with swarm robotics over the last 9 years or so. Our journey started in 2012 when we launched the world premiere of the Spaxels, of the first quadcopter LED flight that was forming a light show in the sky, a lot of dots in the sky forming these beautiful constellations and images. And at that point, that was new, that you have this fleet of centrally controlled quadcopters, drones that are working together to form a new visual expression. And that was really where we came from. We were inspired by the beauty of swarms in nature, by the expressiveness of it, by the mystery. So that was our approach rather than the mechanics of it. So it's important to keep that in mind, that we were coming from being driven by that visual beauty and trying to find the technology that would make this work for us. So as part of the Klangwolke, we launched this Premiere. Spaxels, by the way, is short for space elements, like pixels is for picture elements. So playing with that, taking the pixels into the third dimension and making them programmable in space. The Premiere was a big success, and in the following years, we performed these light shows around the world, really from Sweden to China, from Sydney to Rio, at all kinds of festivals and openings, and pioneered and helped establish this as a new spatial medium that I think by now you're very familiar with these kinds of shows that are now part of big openings, big ceremonies, and have really become something that is part of the repertoire, like fireworks or laser shows. So from 2013 to about 2018 or so, we had our own dedicated team doing all these performances and shows. At some point, of course, we realized there's now this big industry evolving around that, and we as the Futurelab, we are always trying to find the next thing and doing the research, finding new forms of expression. So we realized it made most sense to scale down the performances, the shows, and to focus back on the research aspects and try to find new kinds of applications. As we were developing the knowledge and the technology stack to make the Spaxels shows happen, we realized that up until that point, it was all focused on one kind of vehicle, one drone, and we wanted to explore new kinds of bots and drones and mixed swarms and all kinds of new scenarios. That made it necessary for us to come up with a platform for us to make our own research easier and more straightforward. So we invented this platform called Swarm OS. The idea being that we create an operating system on which our swarm applications can run, and the operating system would take care of the hardware abstraction and making it easy to interface with new and different kinds of vehicles, different kinds of scenarios. So that's the OS aspect there. Means that we came up with this system. On the one hand, you have central command, ground control. On the other hand, little device we call the implant that you connect to a drone, to a bot that supports at least certain standards. And then it becomes compatible. It can be integrated into the swarm and perform these choreographies. And that's where we started with the choreographies. As you know, it evolved into more interactive and dynamic applications as well. Ultimately, though, it was important that the operator of the swarm, the user, is always in control, can always monitor and intervene if necessary. And we created a lot of tools and environments to make that management of the user attention more feasible. And we reached 100 drones in 2016. At that point, that was the world record. By now, you've seen much larger swarms. But we really pushed at that point to be able to scale both technically and in terms of the management of the swarm. I want to also talk about another project that we did more recently. That was another direction that we developed. So we took the spaxels in a way, the 3D illustration, the 3D visualization, went down from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions, but increased the resolution. So we developed these LED display bots that would allow us to create video mosaic images and rearrange and constantly shift these displays to discover very different and very new kinds of expression. We started that project with Japanese telecom NTT as part of a quest to create visions for Tokyo 2020, for the Olympic Games. As you know, they were of course postponed by a year. But the goal was to create these new ideas for human swarm interaction in live sports viewing events and all these kind of public spectacle environments. To visualize what we were going for, you can imagine that you have these bots with the displays driving around, rearranging themselves. And on the one hand, you can of course have a fixed image on each bot, like local to the bot. And on the other hand, you can imagine as if you were projecting a large image onto the bots. And then the bots become like a window to the content. So you could arrange these bots in these honeycomb patterns, in the hexagonal structures, and thereby see a big picture, a big video displayed on clusters of bots. The hardware platform that we came up with was a custom built bot that we worked with an Austrian manufacturer. It was built for going outdoors over rough surfaces really fast. So it was supposed to do really everything, and depending on the environment, whether it's now in a stadium or some other context where these bots would perform. It had has a central rotation axis, so we could keep the hexagonal display independent of the driving direction and then achieve this visual effect that I was just talking about. So taking the dimensions down from 3 to 2 is actually made things a lot harder. You think it would become easier, but actually we discovered it's much harder, because with the drones we had the possibility, if there's one drone that has a problem, it could gracefully return home, it could leave the swarm and not impact the performance. With the fluxels, of course, if you have one bot that stops, then all the other bots need to find a way to work around that, or you need to stop the show or pause the show or something. Fluxels, by the way, I think I didn't mention it, is also a play on words on taking the space element and looking at this visual characteristics of the fluidity and fluxes, in a way, kind of playing with these words. Another challenge that we were facing with the bots was the positioning. So the drones, as you might have imagined, use GPS for outdoor navigation, and the bots, we did research for a long time what could work for the outdoor performances for the bots. And in the end, we were working with the latest, very new, high-precision GPS technologies with RTK, with a special version of satellite navigation that allows us to go down to 1.5 centimeters of accuracy, which really allowed us to keep these dense formations of bots outdoors. An interesting aspect, of course, was that a few weeks before the first event, the first big performance outdoors with the bots was going to happen, the whole Olympics got postponed by a year. So we gained some time to do more research, but also we were faced with an interesting challenge in forming a distributed team with our Japanese colleagues at the other end of the world, starting to learn how to use the systems, working really intensely together with us. And that was an absolutely unique and of course challenging, but also very interesting experience. The bots finally performed at two of the key Olympic torch relay events. So these moments when the Olympic flame is passed between athletes, and there was public events set up around that, and the bots were there finally at two of those key moments to illustrate the passing of the torch from one station to the next. I want to briefly also talk about another recent project, because now you've seen the choreography-based projects, and the Fluxels, like the Spaxels, very much coordinated and choreographed, predetermined. More recent project together with the pen and tablet manufacturer Wacom, we were working on a project called Space Ink to discover the spirit of creativity when you are drawing with these kinds of interfaces. So we were setting up a drone and a small swarm as a brush that you could interface with these tablets, and then we were tracing the painting with long-term exposure with a light painting that was visualized in real time. So you could really go from the origin where we started with all the choreographies and all the swarm performances to a lot more dynamic setups where we're exploring the development of new creative tools and new modes of expression in a very generative way of co-creation with the system. But I think I'm almost at the end of my time. I just wanted to point out that you've seen choreographies, you've seen also briefly more dynamic systems, and what we are also very interested in right now is to explore more of the swarm mechanics to give more autonomy and control and decision capability to the bots and to the drones, and playing with that co-creation with the more generative systems and really developing collectives that find, maybe by themselves, new interesting forms of visual expression, and thereby hopefully continue to shape the discussion of how swarms will interact with us in the, I think, very near future on a more daily basis. Thank you.
Yeah, so if there are any questions from the audience, we have lights up in the gallery.
What was the Flux's position system? You said that there was an outside GPS system, but indoor, how did you track the swarm?
Sorry, if I repeat the question.
Indoor positioning for Fluxes. How did it
Indoor positioning. So we had indoor and outdoor positioning for the bots, and in the indoor case we were using an optical tracking system. So actually we have a setup of that here also in the deep space that helps us track the camera and create this deep virtual setup that uses reflective markers, infrared light, and cameras that triangulate the position. So for indoor cases there are these very robust, super precise, millimeter precise systems. But at some point, depending on the scale and the environment, like outdoors, this becomes infeasible, and you have to change to a different system. Any other questions, discussion points?
From
Also for the
for the online visitors.
Poetic
sure
systems.
if there is something coming in.
So currently we don't have any online questions, but maybe I would have a more like a comment or maybe a question depending who's handling the poetic systems. So especially referring to the Wi-Fi project and also kind of inspired by the project visualizing the flights, as you mentioned, from the airport. Of course, I'm sorry to touch the topic, but we're living in the pandemic right now, and it's very helpful for all of these statistics, all these numbers to be visualized as well. I guess it gives a better understanding of, just a better understanding of humanity in the long run and how to deal with problems on a large scale as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I mean, like visualizing the things or creating an artwork out of this data, of course, it gives us a lot of possibilities in all these different ways. But the idea here is also to create an artwork which is it shows clearly that it is depending on us humans. On first hand, it's based on the imagination of us humans, and on the other hand, we created something which is, let's say, it's based on the things which are going on, and it's just showing that what's going on. It's so to say a kind of real-time visualization. And imagine if there is like nobody going to an airport, there's no artwork. Of course, it would be a pity, but on the other hand, that is really the situation what we try. We create systems, poetic systems, which are showing, so to say, the reality or transforming them. And of course, if things are changing, we might need to change this or use it also for these thoughts which we have been facing in the last 1.5 years. Sure.
I feel like Ars Electronica has been investing a lot also in the social agenda, like art social agenda. And so this technology that you're using to do art, new tool for creativity and maybe entertainment, could be also the old technologies that are like you said. Well, we're not focusing on this now. We're focusing on that. But those technologies that are not left behind, but that now that are more commercialized, you have, of course, interest in going for more state-of-the-art or art research. But all those technologies can be also put to use maybe to this other agenda that Ars Electronica has, because like those swarms will be great, like for example, for some of the projects where people need this kind of technology for searching and things, and it's impossible sometimes to get through the companies because it becomes impossible. But you have a set of artists working with this kind of agenda that could maybe open up for new projects where also these technologies could be put to use. You know, the ones that are not state of the art, but the ones that you already know how to work with very well. That's just a comment and an open question.
Thanks.
If I understand correctly, I think at least part of what you're saying, I immediately understand what you mean. Is that we think that the way we use, for example, the swarms, pushes that discussion forward at least, and then creates nodes of discussion where also others can contact us and we maybe come up together with new ideas. For example, one big motivation of the drone, the initial drone shows in 2012 and the following years, was at that point drones were very much associated with surveillance and military and these kinds of technologies. And hopefully we have played a part in creating a different world, or, different perspectives on drones, and they can be beautiful and they can, be used for artistic purposes. And I think in the meantime also a lot of other ways of using them have come up. And so in that way we really want to, as like an art studio, in that way, we want to be part of those developments, for sure.
Great, thank you.
And what you saw today is like just a glimpse. It's just two fields of many others, or some projects of many others, and we really try to see our responsibility to deal with all these new technologies, and also like using all the ones. And yeah, I just got the sign to say goodbye. So. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining online. Thank you for you here, for the audience being here in the deep space. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.